Hello and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, Fandoms, What's Trending and How You Can Bring Fans to Your Library with Carrie Rogers-Whitehead. Carrie has worked in libraries for nearly a decade and now consults and trains librarians. She is the author of the book, Teen, Fandom, and Geek Programming, published by Rowman and Littlefield, and her new book, Digital Citizenship, Teaching and Practice from the Field, comes out in the fall of 2019. She is the founder of Digital Responsibility, a mission-based company that educates students, parents, and educators on digital citizenship. She is also a college instructor, event planner, who regularly writes on technology for various media outlets. Coming to you now, it's Carrie Rogers-Whitehead.
Hi, I'm glad to be here and geek out with you. We're going to have fun today. So Anne mentioned that book I just wrote, and I have a bunch of this presentation on the different fandoms out there. But I had a section in my book that came out in last year on fandoms, and I was looking through my book to see, oh, well, what can I use? And there were some things that I could use, but fandoms and trends change so fast that much of what I wrote just a year ago was kind of out of date. And in just about 6 months, maybe some of the things I might share might be out of date because fandoms, especially with we have so much content out there, it changes rapidly. But I hope that I can get you up to date on what's going on, and you can maybe share some things as well of what you're watching, what your teens, what your patrons are watching, and I'm excited to geek out with you on this topic. So I ran anime conventions and Yule Balls and an anime club for 8 years when I was at the library. I still do event planning. I still do Yule Balls. I just charge for them now instead of at the library. So I love the geek fandoms and how it has an opportunity to bring people together. I do charity events actually around a lot of fandom and geek events, and I love how people are willing to give through fandoms and their favorite characters and stories. So there's a lot of power in this, and we're going to dive into a lot of those topics today, which I'm excited about it. So it kind of is just a universal thing that I mean, don't get me wrong. There's geek infighting. You've probably seen that as well. But a lot of those favorite characters can kind of reach across race, religion, culture to kind of excite people together. And libraries as a space that also bring people together from all sorts of different abilities and cultures and belief systems. I think fandoms are a great way that just fandoms and libraries go together there. So that's the book if you want. I have a section on fandom trends, but it also dives into a lot of programming ideas, even in things like budgets, marketing, all of it to do fandom events yourself there. So we're gonna dive into what this webinar covers, and I love to have chats and comments. So I will read in your comment box there, and I will have some time where I will pause, and then I will also leave some time at the end for questions and thoughts. But if you're excited or you want to add to something that I'm saying, just please type on in there, and I'll keep it monitored too. So this is what we're covering. I've divided the different fandom trends into streaming services and TV. I feel like I have to separate the two now as streaming services become so big. We're going to go into graphic novels, podcasts, and gaming. And then we're going to go into ways to bring fans to the library, outreach, marketing, social media, partnerships, and display. So I kind of split this in half. Half is fandom, half is kind of programming, marketing, and outreach. And then we'll leave some time to chat and discuss throughout this webinar. So I'm excited to get geeky with you. Let's go in. So let's start with TV, old school TV. I shouldn't say that. I want to talk about the CW, or how when I knew it as a teenager, it was the WB, because that was the day of Buffy and WB, which Buffy is coming back, which I'm kind of excited about. So, but a lot of your Gen Z, a lot of your YA adaptations, it seems like when a YA book gets popular, it shows up on the CW in a few years. These are just a few of some of these of these shows that are going on right now. The 100, also adapted through a YA. You've got Riverdale, which I was surprised how popular that got. So if you're not familiar with Riverdale, it's where a lot of the Archie comics. So I don't know if you have any of the Archie comics. Paper Cuts publishes them. It's very different though. It's very different than the Archie comics, but the characters are the same. But that might be a way that you can get some of your patrons interested in the originals back then. I'm excited about Batwoman, which is going to be out kind of pretty new. DC Legends of Tomorrow bringing in a few different characters. And Flash and Arrow have been running for quite a while on the CW. CW seems to go DC more than anything else. And well, Netflix until recently was going Marvel. But if you want to find DC, that's where you'll find a lot of it on the CW. And these shows have quite the fandom in the Gen Z world, but beyond there as well. We have any CW fans? Any of these as well? And I am excited to kind of see some of the old school things brought back, like Buffy. Although on the CW, a big change is that Supernatural, huge fandom. They have their own conventions. If anyone's been to a Supernatural, they're ending. This should be their last season. And someone correct me if I'm wrong. Is it like 15, 14? Something like that. But the CW it's Supernatural kind of started a lot of this, well, you can argue Buffy and then Angel and then Supernatural just really built up a lot of this fan base on the CW. That's pretty huge. Oh, and I'm glad, yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Walter. The CW app, you can watch the shows the day after they air. That's nice. So TV fandoms. CW, I got to talk about if we're talking fandoms because that's where a lot of it is. Oh, and the last season for Arrow. Arrow has run for a while, so interested to see that. So check them out. Your patrons, or especially your Gen Z ones, are walking out. Now there is just way too TV fandoms to cover. I'm just going to cover a few of them. I want to mention Star Trek Discovery, which is on CBS All Access. Has anyone been watching it? I actually have been watching it. It's gone in some different directions, which is pretty interesting. A lot of diverse characters. It's a little I don't want to say like darker that you'd say than maybe some of the more original ones. Now you've got Picard coming out, so there's some more Star Trek TV, which is exciting to see as well. But CBS All Access, so the TV stations are like, oh wow, well we got all these streaming channels and people are buying and paying for those streaming channels, so why don't we have some of our own? So that is what CBS All Access is. So yeah, Cynthia says it's Star Trek Discovery is definitely darker, but it's kind of appealing to a different group there with Star Trek. Maybe getting some new fans in there that maybe haven't been there as a while. The Walking Dead and all its spin-offs. So if we're going to talk about The Walking Dead, we have to talk about, like, was it The Rise before The Walking Dead? Anyways, Walking Dead kind of almost changed AMC from that station that maybe your parents watch all the old classic shows and the westerns, and then The Walking Dead came, and now AMC has a bunch more kind of fandom type channels than they used to be, for sure. And I have to mention Doctor Who. It's a huge, long-running fandom still going on the BBC, and I have been surprised at the number of like 13, 14-year-olds who have seen the Doctor Who from back in the 70s. So there's it is quite the wide-ranging fandom as well. Yeah, and so I'm glad you mentioned that, Cynthia. So Nickelodeon YA. So Nickelodeon is like tween kind of age too. So it's, yeah, like that 10 to 13 is Nickelodeon, and it's on cable. You can't get Nickelodeon just a basic TV, but that it still kind of remains that kids tween show and introducing some more fandoms there. So thanks please geek out with me, because some of these fandoms are not my fandoms. They might be your fandoms, so please correct me there. Some other ones. So Fox cartoon lineup that they have on Sunday, it kind of started a lot with The Simpsons. You had King on the Hill for a while, and then Bob's Burgers and all. So it is quite the popular lineup on the Fox cartoon. It's just been a staple of Fox TV for a very, very long time, and I have been surprised at the number of young people really, really into Bob's Burgers and see those characters in on T-shirts, on merch. I see memes everywhere with Bob's Burgers. And Walter says it is the best show in the lineup. It is a good show. It's very funny. It's very sharp. They're adding some new shows on that Fox lineup, but a lot of the cartoons they have on the Sunday Fox lineup are extremely popular. And yes, you see them in memes. I mentioned Sherlock on BBC. It's still going. And then I was excited to see AMC. This is fairly new. I think it's the second season, or is it third season? A Discovery of Witches, based on the book. If you've ever read the book, it's quite a long book there. But some more popular fandoms. And sometimes it's hard to tell, like, will this fandom reach this point where we're talking about it in 10 years, or will we not talk about it in a year? But Bob's Burgers has gone on for quite a while. We'll see how Discovery of Witches goes in a few years, but it could be like a Simpsons, who still keeps going after all of these years and still reaches that younger demographic. Okay, so switching, I want to pause if anyone wants to mention some TV fandoms that they particularly like, something that you'd want to talk about there. And then I'm going to move into video games, and I'm going to go back to streaming because I feel like I have to separate TV from streaming. They have their own separate fandoms. It's interesting. When we were kids, there was like 3 channels, and there was more of a universality. Everyone kind of watched the whole thing. And now we have a lot of different nation states of our TV landscape. And it is, in some ways, that's great. We have a lot more content that can also be overwhelming, but also it's less of a touchstone. If you have so many different little shows, we don't rally behind things like in a generations ago, like MASH. They don't get the same numbers as they used to because our attention is split into more different ways. Oh yes, Walter mentioned Firefly. One season and it still keeps going there. Yes, and Outlander and that's based on the books too, the Outlander series as well. And I didn't talk about Game of Thrones because that's on streaming. So I'm gonna go back to that, some of those topics there. And I was talking more about just regular TV. Yeah, Downton Abbey, definitely some great fandoms as well. Let's go, and I'll keep writing there, and I'd love to hear your fandoms there. Downton Abbey for the older folks. And Adriana says they have a newish Firefly book out now. I keep waiting for them to resurrect that series. It hasn't happened yet, but they're resurrecting a lot of the old ones, so we'll see what happens in a few years. So video games. I'm going to go into some of these topics. Mobile game. So you got to separate video game fandoms into different fandoms. Mobile games are its own separate thing, and when I mention mobile games, I think your Candy Crush, right? They have their own little fandoms just on mobile devices. PC games, RPGs, role-playing games. And I always pronounce this correctly, Memorgs, your World of Warcraft, your giant games. But what is interesting that I want to mention on video game fandoms, and I'm going to talk Fortnite a little bit, but Fortnite changed things not because of how popular it was. I mean, that was huge, but Fortnite was a game that crossed over to multiple platforms. Before, you'd be like, okay, this is the Nintendo game, and this is the PlayStation game, and this is the Xbox game, and the games didn't meet, and they were all on those separate consoles. But the game, the console manufacturers are like, oh crap, Fortnite's huge, and it's offered on multiple platforms. Minecraft is offered on multiple platforms too, so that is an interesting trend to watch, that, the consoles and the manufacturers are going to be forced to run video games on multiple platforms, which cuts into their profit margin. I mean, I don't blame them for not wanting to do it, but Fortnite made a big change there, and it was free. As Walter points out, well, Fortnite was free, but it made over $1 billion last year. Over $1 billion for a free game, because of all the different skins and things you can buy and boxes. They were very, very smart how they set up that game. But I find Fortnite very significant because it forced these different manufacturers to make it available on their platform. And that's kind of that. We'll see where that changes in a few years. I mentioned World of Warcraft. I got to talk about Mario, because there's some newer Mario's games. Yoshi just had there's a new Yoshi game. There's a new Mario. You build it's on Switch. You build the actual Mario platforms. You make the Mario games. There was Mario Run on mobile devices. So there's just been an explosion of Mario games in the last few years. Yes, Super Mario Maker. I have that at home, and my kid loves it. It's kind of like a building game, which is kind of fun, and then you get to play the game. Mario Kart and Luigi. I think Luigi's Haunted Mansion is coming back. So there's been quite the number of Mario games. Now the Switch, if you're not familiar, is they call it the Switch because you can play it like on a smaller device. You can also play it on the screen. It's been very popular for Nintendo. Now Wii was hugely popular. Then they had the Wii U, which was meh, and now you have Nintendo Switch, and they're making a smaller Switch too. Reminds me a little bit of a Game Boy, and they're introducing a lot more Mario titles on there as well, which is kind of fun to see. Switch Lite, yes, a little smaller one there. It's supposed to have a longer battery and be built to run on different things. So still huge fandom, lots of things bringing out there. World of Warcraft just recently, like a month ago, reintroduced like how the game used to be like 10 years ago. Um, it looks different now. It's like old school World of Warcraft, which has brought another surge of people, maybe back to World of Warcraft than it was before. Classic, yes, World of Warcraft Classic, and that was like a month or so ago. And I heard that at one point their servers were so full with World of Warcraft Classic it took over 3 hours to even log in. So there's still a lot of love, definitely, especially our old school gamers of World of Warcraft. I want to talk about esports a little bit. This is from my book. I talked a lot about tech trends, and I had a section just on esports. We got any esports players here? Any of that as well? Huge industry, and what you think of as esports when I was studying it is that esport fans are a little older, then they're not just teenagers. There's a lot of now the world champion, I think, of some esport was at Overwatch was 16, but a lot of this skews older. They're adults. They're young adults. They're highly engaged, and there's going to be over $1 billion of expenditures this year just on esports. For spending on sponsorships, on paying to watch, on all of this. So some of the big esports players make over six figures. They get paid to play. So I had this because I played games when I was a kid. My mom would be like, "Oh, why are you playing so many games? It's never going to amount to anything." Well, now you can have a career out of it. So there. So esports is pretty big, and it's not going away anytime soon, and it's growing a lot. And I'm glad you mentioned Overwatch League. Yeah, that was huge. Overwatch was huge. League of Legends, a lot of those just keep growing, and we'll see where it goes, but there's money into it. You're seeing esports on, the sports TV channels. So it's kind of crossed over. There are places that are building esports stadium. The Luxor in Vegas has a stadium. I happened to be there the day they were doing an esports tournament, and I remember like, why is the registration line so long? There were just all of these people in line. I'm like, oh, there's an esports tournament here this weekend, and it was crazy. So there's a lot of that as well, paying attention to that. How can that be incorporated in the library? Can you do your own version of some esports in that library? Just being aware that more and more people are doing it there. And yes, Jasmine, I'm glad you mentioned Roblox, which has brought us the meme of, and I'll spell it, oof, that I keep hearing everywhere. If you're hearing that, it's from Roblox. There. So Roblox is in some ways similar to Minecraft, but you can do little mini games and you can do making games, and it's pretty popular with the kid and the tween crowd. So those are some, and I'm covering like this kind of quickly, I know, because we only have an hour, but please, yeah, pay attention to some of these gaming. It's not like it was when we were kids. There. I've got to talk about Netflix, and this is an interesting environment right now because for a while Netflix didn't have a lot of competition in the streaming. They were kind of ahead of the gate. They started with just mailing, they mailed you the DVD, and then they moved into TV, and for a while it was just like old stuff. They would just kind of recycle reruns of things, but just the last few years they've been putting a big push to bring in original content, and they're creating their own fandoms. So it also has made older shows popular. Okay, I am seeing 13-year-olds wear Bob Ross shirts. Bob Ross is a crazy, frantic meme out there. I see Bob Ross and Bob Burgers memes everywhere online. Um, so it's creating new fandoms. I'm Jessica Jones is going away. That's a picture right on there. We'll talk about Disney Plus a little bit there, and we're gonna talk about some of those fandoms. I mean, there's so many, and it's hard to keep up on. But also Netflix is bringing in they're paying money for bigger time actors. So one example I can think of is Bird Box, that movie that was Sandra Bullock. So that was kind of different because Netflix would often have their own original content and they would just kind of throw in maybe some B-list celebrities. And then they did Bird Box, and Bird Box became crazy memes and YouTube videos everywhere. It's about monsters that if you look you can't you'll die. So there is quite before, it was just a place where you just watched content that was older, and now Netflix is creating their own original content too. And I'm glad someone mentioned Stranger Things. That's huge. I just picked 3 things on there, but Stranger Things is huge. The merch in that is enormous. You see Halloween this year, see how many people are dressed up um, as Stranger Things. It's created this very large fandom, and not only the large fandom from Stranger Things, it's created an interest in a more 80s themed looks. We've seen a resurgence of 80s fashion and 80s themed shows. So, like American Horror Story is doing an 80s themes show this season. There's some more of that as well. I gotta talk Netflix and anime too. And yes, Walter, I agree. The new Voltron was really, really good. I saw it myself. Um, so Netflix is now the exclusive distributor of lots of anime. When I say exclusive distributor, that means it's not going to necessarily show up on Crunchyroll or other sites. Netflix has the property of it. Netflix has built up its anime fandoms quite a lot in recent years. It brought back shows like Evangelion, which is like one of my favorite shows, which I have some mixed feelings about the voice acting, but that's because I'm a nerd. But just in the last few years, you could only access anime maybe on some YouTube, or you have to buy the DVD, or you could find some things on Crunchyroll or a few other sites. And back before then, you could only get it on VHS, right? But now Netflix has made it a lot easier for people to access anime. You also have Netflix originals. They aren't created by Netflix, but Netflix has exclusive rights. So Aijin, which is based on a manga, Castlevania, based on the video game. Some of those you can only get on Netflix, and it's really, really grown and popularized the anime. It's increased the level of fandoms. It's made it easier for people to get into anime. And yeah, we have Netflix to thank for it. And this will date me, but yeah, I had VHS anime when I was a teenager, or if you wanted the DVD, kind of when I was a late teen or like my early adulthood, you'd pay $30. You pay $30 for one volume at FYE for an anime. It was not easy to get into a lot of anime. You had to commit to it as well. So, and I love the comments here. So, just gonna go back. I'm glad, Cynthia, you mentioned Super Smash Brother tournaments and esports. And yeah, Crunchyroll is a great resource for library programming. I have done Crunchyroll a lot in my anime club, which are nice. And yeah, you have to watch some ads, but I agree. Crunchyroll is nice to be able to do that. And yes, Castlevania is kind of fun to come back. It's for the adults, and NES is you can buy like a mini NES loaded with all of your old school games. So there's been a resurgence of like the 1990 games. On anime, I want to cover some popular anime. So I was at a Comic-Con recently on a panel called Anime Academy Awards, and it was the Academy Awards of the last year. And I will say, My Hero Academia. So like we would present our favorite anime in different categories, and the crowd would vote. My Hero Academia, it swept it. It swept it. So if you haven't checked it out, it's about this kid, Deku in the front. He's got the green hair. He's got this quirk. It's like that's what they mean for superpowers. And he's at like a superhero school, and there's a lot of like drama and romance and character development, and it's on its third season, I believe, on Netflix. There's a bunch of manga out, but that was number one in our Anime Academy Awards. Attack on Titan has been going on for years. Still pretty popular. I want to mention Isekai. So isekai anime is just huge. Isekai refers to when people or stories are transported into video games. Overlord is an example of that. Sword Art Online is another example of isekai. Now there's reverse isekai. Video game players come to the real world. And you can see why this is popular. Think of all like the games like World of Warcraft. You get invested in those characters. You play for a lot of, for long periods of time. And so isekai anime, very, very hot. We'll see if it gets in a year from now if people get tired of it. But it is pretty hot. And if you haven't seen Overlord, it's very fascinating. It's a human character that got locked into a video game as a bad guy, and he kind of like has issues embracing his bad guy self. And anyways, it's pretty interesting. Some other popular ones: Konosuba, another isekai. One Punch Man. One Punch Man has been out for a while, but the anime has gotten more popular. He destroys things in one punch, for sure. And then Dr. Stone has been on Netflix and gotten a huge a boost of interest. It's a dystopian series. People are turned into stone as well. And so I had some more comments there. Yes, I mentioned it. Cynthia. All of these have funny titles as well. And high school prodigies have it easy, even into another world. And I love another isekai. That was the day. Was it okay? The slime one. It was the day I turned into a slime. It was about a character that was a little mid-level slime that you find in an RPG who creates like a village and saves the world, and he's a slime. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. That is another Netflix anime title that is popular there too. So yes, Naruto is kind of faded a little bit, but Boruto, which is like the son of Naruto, I guess if I pronounce that right, it's moving now. And yes, Death Notes is still popular. Black Butler is still popular as well. They're still moving it, and there's a bunch that are still popular too. But these are some ones that you'll find a lot on Netflix, and Netflix has grown that popularity. Okay, let's get into some more streaming fandoms as well here. I loved Good Omens on Amazon Prime. It's based on the Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett novel there, and it was you got David Tennant. I mean, you had to have David Tennant for Good Omens, but it was very well done. That's kind of a fun fandom. Lots of Neil Gaiman adaptations, which are kind of fun to see. They're talking about making The Sandman as a TV show too. So Neil Gaiman's having quite the day. Runaways, also based on the comic on Hulu. We got Westworld that just finished up its third season. I heard the third season was better than the second one, but HBO Now is kind of like the CBS All Access. And yes, if you're talking HBO, you have to talk about Game of Thrones, which just wrapped up. If you didn't know, I mean, the whole world was talking about it. It's eighth season and is done. So let's see what happens to HBO now. They gotta replace some of that there too. So, and I'm glad I haven't seen Runaways myself, Walter, but it says it's done an excellent job capturing the characters. And yes, we got some votes for Westworld as well. So you have quite the variety here, and I tried to like touch on the different streaming services. So you got Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO Now, and then we got to talk about Disney. We got to talk about Disney Plus here. So, because this could change the game. Also, I have to mention Apple. Apple is launching its own TV, streaming service as well. So Netflix has a lot more competition than it used to in a while. Okay, so Westworld season 4. Good to know it might be out next year. There. So Disney. Disney owns Marvel, Star Wars, DreamWorks, Pixar, and most recently, 21st Century Fox. Disney owns everything, which is going to make it very interesting for Disney Plus. So for a while, you could have Disney on certain streaming services, and Disney has pulled all of that back. So all of your Marvel titles, your Jessica Jones and your Luke Cage, and all of those have been taken off. We don't know if they'll continue at all. Probably not, is what I'm hearing. But they're canceled and they're moved they're moving to Disney Plus, and Disney is also doing a lot with their Marvel series. So Marvel Phase 4 is what they're calling. So if you saw the Avengers, right? The end of the world, beautiful story, it all tied together. You could watch the movies in Phase 3 and figure out kind of what was going on. You could follow the story. But now they're kind of breaking it up. So there'll be a movie that advances the whole Marvel universe, but there'll also be a TV show that advances the Marvel universe. They're wanting to get you on the TV channel, not just watch the movies. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I'm glad, oh, I did not know that, Walter. So those Marvel shows that were canceled from networks, they can't show them for 2 years. So we probably won't see them and probably again. We'll see. Could be wrong. So on Disney Plus, and there's more announcements on this. They did a bunch of announcements at Disney, at San Diego Comic-Con there. Star Wars, Clone Wars, more cartoons. I just call him Mando. The Mandalorian is, so if you know who Boba Fett is in Star Wars, it's kind of the story of all the bounty hunters. And it's an interesting fandom in the Star Wars community. It's got its own costume troops, and they're going to bring that to Disney Plus there. You've got Loki, and there's the hints that we're going to find out what Loki was doing in the last Avengers movie when he had, the stones and could travel through time. We have WandaVision, which is, two characters. We got, the Scarlet Witch, and we have Vision. My understanding is based on a comic book, Hawkeye. So now if you want to find out what's happening to your favorite characters from the Marvel Universe, you can't just watch the movies. You have to kind of watch the shows. It's bringing back, so everything's coming back, right? Mighty Ducks and Sandlot are rebooting on Disney Plus as well. And Muppets, and there's a lot more. So, this is going to change kind of the streaming game, and my understanding of Disney is that they're taking like reservations. They're trying to make it a little more exclusive to be part of Disney Plus. They've also kind of changed their older titles so libraries might deal with this. I got this question all the time. Someone would come in and say, I want a DVD of Beauty and the Beast, but they kept it in the vault, and they would only release those DVDs for a few years, and then they would pull them away. And so you'd have a copy of Beauty and the Beast with 113, like circulation, and you'd be like, well, good luck watching this, and you give it to the patron. So they're bringing a lot of that. They're not going to put things in the vault like they used to as much. They'll put them on streaming services. So I'm hoping that means we'll get a lot more of those older Disney titles on DVD back for libraries, but I am unsure. And if someone else wants to weigh in, please let me know. So Disney Plus, we'll see what's going to happen there. Okay. I gotta move into podcasts, and I listen to a few podcasts, but I don't listen to geek ones. So if we got some geek podcast fans in here, please chime in on some of your favorites as well. But I want to talk about podcast fandoms. So we've also had a huge growth in podcast listeners and number of podcasts. It seems like everyone and their cousin is starting their own podcast at this time as well. So, but now we're creating fandoms through the podcast community. The first one I was aware of, and this has been around a little longer, is Night Vale. I went to, I had my anime convention for teens, and I kept seeing these teenagers walking around with this moon on their forehead, and I'm like, what is this? And if you're not listening to the podcast, you're not into the podcast community, you'd be like very confused on what this fandom is. But there's a lot of fictional stories. So podcasts aren't just now like two people geeking out. They're making and creating worlds. So Night Vale is a whole complicated world. And then there's a spinoff from Night Vale, Alice Isn't Dead. The Bright Sessions, which is going to be adapted into TV and a YA. So a lot of times it starts from the book and it moves to the TV or the movie. Now it starts from the podcast, goes to the book and the TV. It's from the Bright Sessions. They're recorded therapy sessions that are fictional, that are pretty fun. And Walter mentions Dice Tower, a board game podcast. So it's great. Oh, yeah, chime in with some other geeky podcast fandoms. But I wanted to mention just these ones that have kind of moved out of the podcast realm into other fandom worlds a little bit too. And you might want to keep an eye on the Bright Sessions and buy that book. So on Popular Geek podcast, and there is more, definitely more out there. I like that Publishers Weekly has one, the more to come. So if you are wanting to keep on track of what a lot of comics and graphics novels, you can follow the more to come podcast. There's a bunch of funny D&D podcasts, but this is just one I mentioned, Adventure Zone. So there's different podcasts out there where people role play the Dungeons and Dragons characters and they act it out, and you can kind of listen to it, that are very fun. I love Tabletop. Will Wheaton, so originally from the Star Trek Next Generation, he's very funny, and they just play games and talk. If you wanted to find some of the, yeah, shut up, Wesley. Yes, that's he makes fun of himself a lot, which is very funny. Rocket Talk, Nerd List. We got some other comments here. Adventure Zone's comic book adaptations. Yeah, they go to the top of the New York Times bestsellers. People really like Adventure Zone, and so if you haven't checked out some of those books, because these podcasts are affecting your circulation, and it's bringing people to the printed material too, which is really fun to see. So thank you for mentioning that, Cynthia, on Adventure Zone, the comic books out there. So if anyone has other have some, and I just did a small selection of the podcasts out there, please chime in on some Popular Geek podcasts. I want to talk about some graphic novel trends. So this is kind of interesting. You have Twitch in real life. Is anyone familiar with Twitch in real life? So we think of Twitch for gaming, and yeah, it's huge for gaming. You got live stream gaming. You can watch people play games. But now you have more creators creating channels, and they even create meetups. So people are making their own comic books, creating their own channel so people can follow, and they get together. They get together through Twitch IRL in real life. So there's more content on those digital platforms like Twitch. I didn't really think of Twitch as a content platform. I thought of it as like a live streaming platform, but that area of Twitch has grown a lot. So there's more 1 billion in sales for comic books in 2017, but now there's more smaller publishers. Since it's going so well, smaller publishers can go in there and take a little more risks with some of our comics there. So, oh yeah, Webtoon. Webtoon is a great one too. You can read some comics there. So this does present some challenges for librarians. Like, how do I curate all of these digital comics? Can so, there's still, when I researched this when I was at the library. Like, how can I get like the Marvel and the DC and those digital comics in the library? And it was hard. They didn't have the platform as good for the libraries. They had them for like a purchasing. So if someone wants to chime in on that, that seems to be something that can be tricky, of how you get these digital platforms in your library. Especially indie comics, and more comics are being supported through crowdfunding, or they're using different apps to make their own comics, and they're putting them on different places. So it's wonderful to see so many creators of comics, which lends itself to some great library programming. Sometimes it can be hard to get those things in the library too. So those are just some trends there. I just want to pause for a second, and I know I've gone a little over time in this one, so I'll have to hurry to get through some of these other parts here. But I love like your comments, and there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on with streaming and gaming and podcasts and all of this. It's just been an explosion. The geeks have inherited the earth. Yeah, Hoopla, I did find a lot of comics. I just didn't feel like some of the most popular ones I could get on those platforms. So RB Digital and Hoopla, if you want to check out some of the comics. If other ones have suggestions, because it seems like certain publishers are pretty restrictive with what they allow on their platforms. So we'll see how that all pans out here. But chime in if you have something I missed, and if you want to add something on digital comics. And we're going to start moving on to, okay, we got all of this stuff going on. We got all these fans. We got fans of all sorts of things. How do we bring them to the library? So let's talk about this, and I'm going to go a little fast to get through this here. Just some ideas I'm going to throw out here. Passive geek competition. The geeks get riled up really quickly. So I have actually done fandom voting at different booths too, for like if I'm doing a booth at a geek event. It's fun to kind of say Star Wars or Star Trek, Marvel or versus DC, or this character versus this character. People have an opinion on this stuff. So doing kind of verses and competitions and battle of the geeks, battle of the books, battle of the TV series adapted into books, battle of the podcast adapted into a YA novel adapted into a TV series. Yes, do some passive geek competition displays. Um, Here's some places to find geeks on social media. I'm a big Reddit user, so I find a lot of geeks on Reddit. I stay on top of some geek trends because there are a lot of geeks on Reddit. And the anime community on Reddit, whew, it's huge. Tumblr, I will say, not as much as in the past. So at the end of 2018, I believe, Tumblr kind of banned all pornographic content, and then people left Tumblr. And it was like valued billions of dollars, and it sold for not that much. So people are not on Tumblr as much as they used to be, but that used to be a place to find a lot of geeky stuff. DeviantArt is still going strong. It's been out there for a number of years. You can buy, you can promote, you can put your own library art. That's something I would do with my anime club teens. I would showcase their art on a DeviantArt account. And fanfiction.net and AO3, Archive of Our Own, still huge, still big fanfiction sites. So those are the two big ones, fanfiction.net and AO3. I got to mention 4chan, but I also got to mention beware of 4chan because there are some dark places on 4chan, but there also are a lot of geeks. I want to talk about Discord a bit. So Discord started as, doing like people chatting through games over like headphones and headsets and things. But now Discord is way beyond gaming. Just kind of like Twitch has gone beyond just gaming, Discord is beyond gaming. And so people have all sorts of different channels that they set up on a number of different geeky topics. So any kind of geeky topic, you can find people chatting on it about Discord. So think if you're not on Discord, the best way I can describe it is maybe like Slack. It's kind of like commentary, usually short commentary on different topics, and you can subscribe to different servers. And sometimes you have to be invited, sometimes they're private, sometimes they're public, and be in these big giant group chats. So I read that Fortnite, which is hugely popular, had over 100,000 people on their Discord server talking about Fortnite. That seems a little overwhelming. I don't know how you could have a conversation about that, but it's huge. Just so much so much chatting is going on Discord. Although a lot of that chat doesn't bubble up to like the mainstream social media because it's often done in private, smaller places. So you might not be aware of what's being so popular because it's done in these different spaces that are harder to find as well. So those are some places that you can find find some geek places out there. Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Erica. So one Fortnite gamer switched from Twitch to Mixer. I am not as familiar with Mixer, but I guess time will tell if people want to move there. Maybe people are saying like Twitch is not as much for gaming. Now it's doing all these other things. I don't know. We'll see. I want to also mention visual novels, if you're not familiar with these. So Choose Your Own Adventure has had a resurgence. We saw that on Black Mirror did a whole Choose Your Own Adventure movie. Bear Grylls runs a TV show on Netflix that you can choose what Bear Grylls will do. Visual novels are kind of like an interactive game genre where you get to choose what they do. They're done in anime style, typically. There's a lot of anime stories. To me, visual novels crossed the mainstream when KFC created their own anime character in a visual novel. There. So they sometimes they're turned into light novels. When I say light novels, it's like a short novella that is visual, and then manga is just the art there. But they're growing in popularity in the US. I think this is a great way for libraries to create their own. There's a number of different visual novels like software that you can use. you have to pay for some of these or you have to watch ads, but they can be really fun to kind of do it on their own way. Oh, and I'm glad we got some comments here. So Jasmine, yes, Minecraft has a TV show that is Choose Your Own Adventure. That you get to choose what they do. More some of those choose your own adventure books are being turned into board games. Choose Your Own Adventure also has a graphic novel adaptations, and a lot of those old ones in like 1991 are coming back. They're coming back. So, in addition to the visual novel theme, that whole choose your own adventure style is kind of having this resurgent, and I think that it offers a lot of different opportunities to your your own adventure library game, create your own visual novel, choose make a display of choose your own adventure. There's just so many things you could do with this type of style that and excitement people have there. Oh yeah, when Walter mentions Wendy's put out a free 98-page fully illustrated free RPG campaign. Wow. So KFC and Wendy's are on top of this. So, so why can't libraries do it too? It's quite popular there. Uh, Okay, collection development. I'm going to wrap up a few more slides, and I want to give some chances for questions and things there too. So, just some general tips. If I feel like we should be pulling out these video game novels. There's so many of them. The Halo video game novel has gone on for a long time, and you're seeing more of these video game adaptations. I mentioned isekai anime. People love kind of the blending of the different genres with video games and fictions and movies and all sorts of things. So consider pulling that out there as well. And then we have like this weird, and I don't know the best way you want to describe it. Like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. They're not graphic novels, but they're not fully novels. If you have suggestions on what you want to do with that, I've seen different things. I've seen some libraries pull them out. I've seen some, interfile them, but a lot of people are looking specifically for those kind of in between books there, especially for kids that are learning how to read. I did all of the Captain Underpants, Jasmine mentioned those, with my kid. He loved them. They were great for learning how to read because he could see the images and it was exciting and it was fun and really got him excited about reading. So pulling out those books and not interfiling them, there's more and more of them out there. I would be a suggestion as too. And so book into movie display, but maybe you could say podcast into displays. You're seeing this crossover and how can you pull those out as well there too. Yeah, Geronimo Stilton is one. Some of those Choose Your Own Adventure books are kind of that half. You also have like half novel, half comic book. Marvel and DC have their own kind of mix. They're not quite graphic novels, but they're not quite novels. So I would suggest, I think pulling them out is smart, but also just being aware that there's more and more of those as well. So here's some geek outreach ideas. I'm sure a lot of you know some of these already, but I want to mention gaming particularly because tabletop gaming has gotten more and more popular. When my library used to do International Gaming Day, which is usually like the first weekend in November, ALA kind of would offer free tabletop games for that. I don't know if they still do that now, but they would send you them if you signed up on time. But if you tabletop, especially D&D, has gotten a surge of popularity. A lot of people just, they want to disconnect. They want to look face to face. There's been a huge number of tabletop games that have just come up in the last few years. And libraries, to me, are an ideal place to do it. But if you have a gaming store, they regularly do these type of tournaments. Can you come to their gaming tournament and put out something for free or visit with people or do something with them together? Microsoft and Best Buy, because now people, shop online, they've been introducing more and more of these gaming stores. So the Microsoft store near me has like Minecraft tournaments. They do like VR kind of gaming days. They do a bunch of different activities in their stores, and Best Buy is offering some of those too. So, I mean, to me, that also seems Best Buy offers a lot of grants as well. Just throwing that out there for STEM and education. Can a library work with some of these stores to kind of collaborate on these things? And maybe you can find a podcast in your community and say, hey, want to do a live podcast show at the library? there's more and more of those going around, especially the big popular ones. They'll go on tour across the whole country doing live podcast shows, and people pay to go in them. Why, maybe you could find a local one and do it. They can do it for free and just come out to your library. Here's some geek news sites. I'll mention you'll get a PowerPoint of this. I know I've crammed it with a lot of information too. So in addition to social media, so I mentioned some social media sites you can find geek news. These are some other places you can find some geek news if people have their own favorite sites that they like. Yeah, please chime them in there. And I'm going to mention, Walters mentions, oh, Board Gamers Here knows Dice Tower Con in Orlando just starting selling tickets. Okay, Dice Tower Con. There's probably some kind of gaming con near you. If you can find one in your community, find ways to work together, because libraries with the space that you have just seems pretty ideal to do a lot of tabletop gaming. Don't make people charge. Offer it for free. But these are some geek news sites as well here. And I got to mention Free Comic Book Day. So I ran Free Book Day for years when I was with the library. It's the first Saturday in May. Now, my experience, so the first year I did it, gosh, was it back in like 2011 or 2010? So it was a while ago, the first time I did it. They were like, sure, how many comics do you want? And they send me a bunch. And then after a few years, it got more and more popular, and I got less comics. So, which is great. I love that they're popular there. But if you don't get on their list, you might not get any comics, or you might get less comics. So sign up. It's run by Diamond Comics Distribution. Give it plenty of time in advance to sign up for the library. And I would also, when you put out your Free Comics Books Day display, make it very clear that this is kids, this is teens, and this is adults, and don't put them all together. So that happened in a few library branches, that kids were looking around and they're very adult comics. So keep them separate. That's my suggestion as well. As I once run Free Comic Book Day before. Yeah, Walter mentions Emerald City Games. Yeah, that's great. If you're in the Tampa Bay area, Emerald City Comics. Yeah, I would work with local comic shops, and sometimes they would give me things that they couldn't sell, but I would promote them, and we kind of have like a trade there too. So, but Free Comics Book Day is all free, and they share, and you can see some pictures from what happened in 2019. They had a Stranger Things comic. They keep things pretty fresh and pretty popular there with Free Comic Book Day. Okay, so I want to give a few minutes at the end. These are some references. Also check out Batman Day there. I didn't mention Batman Day, but you might want to check that one as well. But I know I covered a lot of information. Wanted to give a few minutes at the end to talk about your fandoms or what you do, or if you had questions on anything that I brought up today. There. Oh, I'm looking back over the thread. Yeah, Dork Diaries is another one of those kind of in-between novels. There's got to be a librarian term for that, which I don't know. But they are quite popular, having something that's not a novel, but not a graphic novel, and it can really, I love how it can encourage reading. And I know I've left off fandoms because it's just so many, but I hope I covered at least some of the big ones there too.
Oh wow, Carrie, you did so much. As we've been saying in the chat on our private chat, we didn't even know some of these things existed.
It's true. It's hard to keep on top of it. There's a lot out there. And in a year, you'll have to do this one again because there'll be a whole bunch of new stuff.
Right, exactly. All right, does anybody have any questions for Carrie? You've been so active throughout this whole session. It's been great. We're getting some thanks. There must be questions, though.
Thank you. So you'll get them the PowerPoint because, yeah, I put a bunch of stuff on there too, so they can look back.
Yeah, the PowerPoint is available in the downloads area. So.
Okay. Yes.
And I have to say, Carrie, your slides were great this time. I had very little to adjust.
Thank you, thank you. I know that you work hard on that, Anne. Well, I hope, yeah, thank you, all, and thanks, Jasmine. I hope that some of these ideas can spark some excitement in your library.
I'm just seeing thanks so far. Are there any questions? Doesn't look like it, Carrie. You answered all their questions on fandoms. Let's wait for one more typing here. Let's just see. Lots of new ideas.
Yeah. Oh,
All
awesome.
right. I don't see any other questions. So, Carrie, thank you for putting this together. Lots of interesting stuff, and everyone has suggested perhaps in 6 months or annual update on this, and that's probably a good idea.
Yes, especially when Disney Plus hits I'm excited to see what happens, how the
There you
landscape
go.
changes.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and thanks, Carrie, for putting this together. And we'll see you again soon on another PCI webinar. Have a
Thank
great
you.
afternoon, everybody.